It's another wild day in the world of Magic the Gathering. They have just released the official teaser list for Bloomburrow, which contains a bunch of fun information. And on the complete other side of the coin, there have been some disastrously bad changes to the Magic Redemption program.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. The Magic Historian.
My bones hurt. Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for another glorious installment of Mega Magic News. We've got redemption nonsense. We've got Bloomburrow greatness. But before we talk about the teasers, speaking of Bloomburrow, the actual story for Bloomburrow has been released and I am enjoying it quite a bit. So I'm covering it on my other channel called Fantasy Geographic. If you want to know what's going on with the Bloomburrow story, I've already released the first 2 installments, so you can check it out there. And I imagine the teasers that we're going to go through here are going to whet your appetite further for more Bloomburrowage. All right, so let's dive in. If you're not familiar with what the official teaser list is, every time a set comes out, Mark Rosewater puts together a list of tiny tidbits. He'll tell you some of the rules text. He'll tell you creature types, things like that. It's just a smorgasbord of little bits of information to get your basic imagination and your enthusiasm fired up. So let's dive in. First thing on the list are things that you can expect. A new mechanic, which is a tweak on a mechanic from 2013. So we're looking at a mechanic from over a decade ago. And when I looked at this one, nothing really jumped into my mind. Remember, when they say tweak, it's probably going to be the way that they tweaked something like Morph, where they said, check it out, this is a Morph creature that has Ward 2 when it comes to things like Disguise. So this is going to be something we're familiar with, but that has some little modification going on with it. After that, we've got Destroy Target Creature. A spell with only this rules text gets a new mana cost. So essentially, the card that we had before this was Murder. 2 black and 1 to destroy target creature. Now, he could be being really tricksy with this, right? When it says a new casting cost, my gut reaction is they're just going to make it 1 black and 1 destroy target creature. But if they go that route, that makes for a super powerful creature destruction spell with literally no downsides, right? So maybe we're actually looking at another color just getting the ability to straight up destroy a creature, and that's all it says. Maybe they're looking to change white, and white isn't going to have the whole, well, the creature has to be tapped for you to destroy it, or the creature has to be attacking or blocking for you to destroy it, right? Because white has more of those rule-setting abilities. So it could either be a black creature kill spell at a reduced cost, but if they do that, let's say they do it for 2 black, that kind of obsoletes a bunch of older destruction spells. That also being said, with the new play boosters and the upping of the power level overall of Magic, that might just be the way they're going. Maybe that's part of the way they juice Bloomburrow by going ahead and saying, let's make a powerhouse creature destruction. So my guess is either a cheaper black creature kill or white creature destruction, but theoretically could go in any color. Those seem like the most likely. After that, we've got a cycle of uncommon lands that each reference 4 creature types. We've actually seen these in the previous spoiler cards that have already been released, so we know what those are. Go check out my Bloomburrow spoiler video if you want to see those lands. Each one does have 4 different creature types, but there are some overlap between them to let you know what the different 2 color combinations are for creatures, right? After that, we've got counters in the set. +1/+1, blight counters, coin counters, finality counters, flood counters, flying counters, indestructible counters, loyalty counters, stash counters, stun counters, and supply counters. So the most interesting out of those are obviously going to be blight, coin, flood, stash, and supply. Stuff like stun, loyalty, indestructible. We all know what those do. But blight that might be ruining lands. Maybe it turns lands into swamps. Maybe it destroys them after you use them. X number. That's probably not too likely. Wizards is eased back on land destruction overall. But I imagine that that is probably something that affects lands. Maybe it removes their abilities and just turns them into a basic swamp. Of course, I am kind of thinking of the original Blight card from back in Legends, so that might be influencing me that way. Stash counters feel like something you build up a bunch of and then sacrifice something for a reward. Coin counters are probably counters you can remove for some kind of effect, right? After that, we've got a non-creature subtype makes its first return. When I looked at that, I just went, a non-creature subtype makes its first return. What are we going to be dealing with in that regard? I don't actually have any really good guesses for that one. So let's move on to the next item. A 10-card cycle that acts as tribal glue. So it's essentially, we're going to have, I'm guessing, uncommon lords for all the different creature types, so that you can go, here you go, if you want to play a tribe that normally doesn't get as much love, because remember, they're dicing mouse and rats up into 2 different categories. So I could see that as being like, yo, here's your rat lord, here's your mouse lord, and something across all 10. That just feels very likely. After that, we've got 2 mechanics that came out in the same set return, each part of a different 2-color archetype. That's vague enough that you just go, okay, this could be literally any set in Magic's history. The game's been around for 30 years. So it's just two mechanics we've seen before, but they're going to show up in different 2-color archetypes. That one doesn't really fire me up that much. After that, the word squirrels shows up 4 times in rules text. That doesn't specifically mean on one card they're saying squirrel 4 times. It means there are 4 cards that reference squirrels in the rules text, and that could literally just be multiple of the lands that mention squirrels, right? Unless for some reason saying in rules text they're actually meaning reminder text, which explains something, but it specifically says rules text. So this says to me 2 of those are going to be lands that we've already had mentioned. You know, Rosewater likes to get tricksy with that stuff, so I'm guessing it's not going to be as much as you think. A mythic cycle with a new symbol. What does that even mean? Does that mean that they literally are putting in another type of card? Like, what do they mean, a new symbol? A new set expansion symbol? Do they mean a new watermark? And ultimately, is that a big deal at all? A new symbol on a mythic? Like, what is that going to do for you? So that one, that's low rated as far as I'm concerned. After that, we've got one of the cutest mechanics we've ever made. I presume that he is talking about the offspring mechanic, which essentially allows you to make the children of your Bloomburrow creatures and things like that, which, if I'm not mistaken, because we've only seen a little bit about this, it'll basically make a 1/1 version of a creature you already have. So it'll have the same casting cost, the same abilities, but it'll be a 1/1 version of that. We saw one of these tokens in the Beetle and Grimm's Bloomburrow kit mock-up, so I can't think of anything that's going to be cuter than the offspring, because they make them cutesy little bunnies and stuff. But theoretically, we haven't seen the entirety of the set. It could actually be something else. Next on the list, we have rules text that will be showing up on cards. It says, create X tokens that are copies of target token you control. So a doppelgang that just specifically copies tokens, presumably for cheaper. This could be pretty gross. Getting to make multiple tokens has always been something that people enjoy, right? And Magic has more tokens than ever these days. Next up, if you control a raccoon, you may discard a card. I mean, we knew that raccoons were going to be a creature type in this, so this is basically the same difference as a card that said, if you control an elf, you may discard a card. If you control a this, you may discard a card. So it doesn't really tell you that much, but if you're excited about the little trash pandas, then that's going to get you geared up. Next up, we have creatures your opponents control have base toughness 1. Now that is some rules text. All your guys have 1 toughness. Oh, let me just call in my Orcish Bowmasters to go, let's do this, right? Like, obviously, that is a hype rules line. The question is, what kind of card is it on? Is it on a weak creature that's easy to get rid of? Is it on an enchantment? Is it on like a blue spell that only lasts until end of turn? That's really going to determine how exciting this is. Then we've got, whenever one or more other creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying. This is the first time that we've seen this wording ever in Magic the Gathering, because most of the time when creatures leave the battlefield, they're going to the graveyard. But if the creatures are going to exile, that counts as not dying. If it goes back to your hand, if it goes to your library, like there's a number of different places it can go to that count as not dying. And I wonder if that's specifically because Wizards has really amped up the amount of exile style cards that they've created, because they created indestructible and all these other things that needed answers. So more and more we're seeing effects that exile instead of destroy. So this is something that may give you a benefit if your opponent exiles your stuff, or it may be based around you trying to get cards into other zones. We'll have to see specifically what it's on, but I find that wording to be fascinating. Next up, it says, if it's the first instant spell, the first sorcery spell, or the first otter spell. I'm guessing if it's the first one of these spells you cast each turn, do X. Most likely either if it's the first time you've cast one of these, draw a card, or maybe even copy it. There are a lot of copy effects these days, right? After that, we've got put a flood counter on target land. Interesting. Well, maybe my idea of blight counters, that could lend credence to it, or the opposite. Flood counters most likely turn lands into islands, and they might have blight counters that turn lands into swamps. They might actually have like an archetype where you play black-blue and you're messing with your opponent's mana supply. Being able to turn your opponent's lands into other lands is less hampering than straight out destroying them, right? Land destruction is pretty crippling in Magic, but going, now this is essentially just a source of colorless mana, isn't as big of a setback. So we'll have to see, but I presume both flood and blight counters will affect lands. Then we've got where X is the number of creatures your opponent controlled. It actually says where X is the number of creatures you opponents controlled that were exiled this turn, but that's obviously a typo. So this is probably some kind of board wipe that literally exiles all the creatures from the board and then gives you some kind of effect based on the number of creatures that were exiled under your opponent. That could be make a big creature, that could be gain life, who knows? But it does feel like it's going to be some kind of board wipe that tallies up everything your opponent's lost and gives you a reward, right? Or, I guess theoretically, could give your opponent a reward if it's a really cheap board wipe. After that, we've got for each other squirrel and or food you control. So if you want to play a squirrely food deck, then you're going to get some kind of benefit from that. After that, we've got as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards exiled with card names. So this is a variation on Delirium. Delirium cares about you having 4 different card types in your graveyard. This one in particular requires you having those actually removed and exiled with this specific card. So it's actually kind of like that gateway card. There's an artifact that's essentially a gate where you exile cards, and once you have cards of 5 different casting costs, then you get an effect from it. Same kind of difference, but in this case, it's just based off of card types instead of casting costs, right? After that, we've got up to 1 target artifact, creature, or planeswalker an opponent controls loses all abilities until your next turn. This could be a planeswalker ability. This could be an activated ability of a creature. This could be something tacked onto a spell that does other things, like perhaps a blue spell that says draw 2 cards, up to 1 target artifact, creature, planeswalker, and opponent control loses all abilities until next turn. It probably won't be a card draw spell like that because we already have that otter spell that lets you draw 2 and costs 1 less if you have an otter, but that is a possibility. Next, we move on to creature type lines from the set. And the first one is my favorite one. Creature, hamster, citizen. When you actually read the Bloomburrow stories, you'll see that there are a wide array of different creatures that are represented in the world, and I like that. I very much enjoy the fact that instead of having our regular old humans, Leonins, Vidalkins, vampire people, instead we've got just straight up animals, but living human-style lives. There is a distinct difference there. So, you've got hamster citizen, you've got frog advisor. There's a bunch of frog folk, it seems like, and there's the one frog druid. Oh, I love him so much. His artwork is so fun. He's bringing the reins. Like the frog ones are really speaking to me. Then you've got a skunk assassin, which is fun. I mean, on one hand, though, assassins are supposed to be quiet and deadly. Wait, the skunk is silent but deadly. Get it? Because of the smell? Like, you'd smell a skunk coming from a ways off. So that means, like, it's going to be more challenging to be an assassin. After that, we've got a raccoon berserker. Oh, you must have interrupted him going through the trash. I'm amazed at how brave some raccoons can be. I've interrupted them trying to get in my trash can and had them turn around and be like, what, you want something? And I'm like, get out of here, you little chump, you little moron. We're going to find you falling through the roof soon enough. You can hear them up there scurrying around. Raccoons are wild. Anyways, next up, squirrel, warlock, bard. What a crazy combination. Being a warlock isn't enough for this squirrel. He's got to sing about his greatness too. That's amazing. Then you've got a rabbit mouse. They got some weird breeding going on Bloomburrow. I'm telling you that right now. Then you've got legendary creatures. Badger warrior. I can pretty much guarantee you that that badger's name is Hug. And if you want to know how I know that, go check out the Bloomburrow stories over on my Fantasy Geographic channel, and you too will be clued in. Another legendary creature is the Weasel Mercenary. Now, I think this might be the red-hooded villain weasel of the story. We'll see how that turns out. You've got a legendary elemental elk and a legendary bird dragon. The elemental elk is probably the spring elk that brings springtime to the world of Bloomburrow. And the bird dragon is probably the sun hawk, who has some relation to the sun. So those are probably both calamity beasts, right? The calamity beasts are the big bad threat in Bloomburrow. And then finally, here are some of the names of cards in the set. You've got Crumb and Get It. That's pretty good. Festival of Embers, Hop to It, Kidnap, Playful Shove. I'm guessing Kidnap is probably a spell that lets you take control of one of your opponent's creatures that has like a low-level power or something like that. So, Playful Shove, Polywallop, Rabid Gnaw, Shrike Force, War Squeak, and Wishing Well. Didn't we already get a card called Wishing Well in Eldraine? Maybe it's Witch's Well or something like that. I don't know 100%. Anyways, that wraps up all of the teasers. So the next thing to talk about is the craziness that's going on with Magic Redemption, specifically in regards to foil cards, right? So if you don't know what Magic Redemptions are, that has to do with MTGO. And Redemptions are actually one of the coolest aspects of MTGO. If you've only played Arena, you might not be aware that Magic the Gathering Online offers you a way to turn your digital cards into physical cards, and not by playing in a tournament where you can win a booster box. Instead, by actually collecting a full set on Magic the Gathering Online, you can redeem it. And what that means is Wizards of the Coast physically sends you a full set and removes the digital set from your collection. That, to me, is something that really, I mean, if Arena had something like that, it obviously wouldn't function because of the way they have it set up. But it's something that I feel is sorely lacking from Arena. I've always enjoyed the fact that you could do redemptions on MTGO. I've done a bunch myself, but they are getting decidedly worse. First of all, they're upping the cost of redemption. So they used to cost $35 for you to redeem the set. So you have to buy the digital booster packs, collect the whole set, then you have to pay $35 US to redeem it, plus additional shipping, which is like $10 if you're in the States, but gets up a lot higher if you're in other places like I am in Canada. So they're moving the $35 to $45. Now, if that was all that was going on, this honestly wouldn't really have made the news. But it's what's going on with foils on Redemption, like, that is absolutely insane to me. They are discontinuing the ability to redeem foil sets. So starting with Bloomburrow, you can know, like before, you could go collect a full regular set or collect a full foil set, and it has to be either full regular or full foil. Can't combine them, right? And then you redeem that set in its entirety. So you could literally collect an entire foil set and redeem it, and they would mail you an entire foil set. But now they said, we're not doing that anymore. But they're not taking the foils out of MTGO. So the foils are still going to be in there. But the reality is most people hate foils on MTGO and have no interest in owning them, right? So they're literally talking about in the article about how they're removing foil redemptions. They're also going, yo, wouldn't it be cool if like when you were looking at the regular board state, you didn't have to look at foils on MTGO? Well, great news. We're going to give you the ability to toggle to turn foils off. So they're literally like, you can't redeem foils anymore. Oh, no, sorry, that's not true. That's not true. You can't get foil sets. You can redeem an entire foil set. And do you know what you get? A regular set. So if you spend the extra time and resources to build an entire foil set of Bloomburrow and you want to redeem it, then they're going to send you a regular set. And it gets even more ridiculous because you can't combine the two. Let's say you have half the set in foil and half the set in regular. You can't combine them. You are not allowed to combine them. You either have to have a full regular set or a full foil set still. And they're keeping the redemption ratio. So it used to go like this. Basically, they would have 7 regular sets to redeem for every 1 foil. So like the foil sets comprised 1/8 of all the redemptions. And they still do. So you still, once all the regular redemptions are used up, there are only foil redemptions left. But you can't get a foil set. So like 1/8 of the redemptions are ultra rare regular ones where you still have to collect up all the foils. It blows my mind, especially since they're launching like almost the equivalent of special booster fun packs on MTGO that are releasing all these alternate styles. So they're going to start selling packs that have special variant artwork on MTGO and going, well, we've got these now. So that's pretty cool, right? But they're still keeping the foils in there. They're not discontinuing the concept of foils, but they won't let you redeem the foils out ever again. Now, for sets that are still on the cusp of redemption, the most recently released sets on MTGO, you can still redeem the foil ones of those for foil sets. But with Bloomburrow, everything changes into this absolute garbage nonsense. They literally thought about removing foils. They're like, we considered removing foils at all from the platform, but we're just not. This is wild to me. Foils on MTGO are even less desirable than styles on Magic Arena in most cases. So, like, I don't really understand why they're doing this. I know that there was a problem in the past where MTGO screwed up. And basically what happened was, to make up for some error that happened on the game, they accidentally gave everybody, and I mean like a ton of people, an entire foil set of Brothers War. So Brothers War got basically like gutted on the foil market because tons of people did redemptions, and then you got all these foil cards, and these I'm going to turn around and sell these, sell them to shops, sell them to whatever. Basically, it created a crazy supply of the foil sets, which feels a bit weird to me because they do like restrict the amount of foil redemptions, but apparently they had enough, like, I guess most sets don't get all their foil sets redeemed. But for the Brothers War, I think they ran out of foil set redemptions. And MTGO isn't operated by Wizards of the Coast anymore. They handed it off to Daybreak Games, right? So Daybreak basically screwed this up. And this may have actually also gutted the sales of Brothers War collector boosters and things like that. Because collector boosters have already kind of hollowed out the market for foils, on top of the fact that Wizards prints the foils to poor quality, right? So you have essentially, I guess, competing products, and Wizards of the Coast just finally threw up their hands, because this isn't a decision that Daybreak Games gets to make, right? They have to get the redeemed set from Wizards. Daybreak doesn't have the right to print these sets out and produce them and like give them to people. They have to get them from Wizards. So Wizards must have said, you know what? This isn't worth it. We're letting you guys get foil sets, but that's devaluing foils. And you can see how much Wizards tries to leverage foils by making special ultra foil collector version decks for Modern Horizons. The fact that they put like foils come in every play booster, and the Assassin's Creed, get your special foils. So my guess is Wizards had some background accounting going on, the Brothers War stuff really clued us into how bad it is an idea to give you guys unfettered access to our foils, especially when you're going to mess up and hand them out to everybody. It's absolutely wild. So MTGO has just taken a step downwards, which I'm not surprised by, considering that once Wizards got rid of it, they don't care anymore, right? Like, I'm sure they get a portion of the profits that Daybreak makes, but ultimately, they've essentially sunsetted MTGO and said, we're done dealing with this. You can make it work if you can, and we'll take some of the money, but Arena is the ship we're sailing now, and that's where we want all the players ultimately. So I expect over time MTGO will continue to suffer from setbacks like this, and eventually it will shut down and people will move over to Arena or just stop playing digitally. We'll have to see how that goes. Maybe they're going to wait for that to happen until Arena has gotten larger and has a bigger, older, like a lot more cards from the older years so that they can kind of absorb people who want access to more cards. But that wraps up all the news. Thanks for coming by and hanging out, my friends. A reminder to go and watch the Bloomburrow lore videos. The story is shaping up to be a lot of fun. So there'll be a link here at the end of the video to the playlist that contains both of the Bloomburrow lore videos. And guess what? More will be coming probably every day because Wizards started the story out way earlier than I expected they would, and I have no idea how many installments there will be, but I expect that for the next 3 days at least, we're going to get them all week, and then again for the next week for 10 installments bare minimum. So, go enjoy that stuff, and I will see you all, my friends, in the next video.